So thank you, Jacy, and thank you for organizing this seminar, and thank you for the Latin American fellows. I see a lot of faces that I know from the past, students and collaborators, and I'm really happy to see them in this program that it seems to have like an outstanding interdisciplinary approach. What I'm going to talk today is it's to try to share with you a little bit of our research we have done in the Pacific coast of Baja California, and also for the Pew Fellow project, that my final outcome is to write a popular science book about successful stories, a little bit about Fiji indigenous community and their property right regimes and how they have settled some interesting payments for conservation. So first of all, I know that for all of the ones that have an economic background, institutional arrangement sounds like something common, but people sometimes when we say institutional arrangements think in buildings or think in institutions like the Brent School for the environment, and but in the sense of the political economy are all these type of customs, rules, socially accepted norms that people follow. No, one institutional arrangement, perhaps in the States, used to be that we all start at 11:30, but that changed, and you're becoming more flexible as you are influenced by Latins. So those are the type of things that make society to work together and to accept these norms and achieve their goals that they place. No. Oh, this doesn't work. Well, I mean, so we always talk about ecosystem-based management, and I love this definition by Tundi Agardi that she says that ecosystem-based management is the joke of the party that everybody laughs at, but no one understands. And basically, it's this interaction of how society retrieves or gets some services from the ecosystem. If you ask like normal scientists or monodisciplinary scientists, immediately we think about the ecosystem service from the sea, and we think about fish, or well, a little bit of energy. But what are these relationships between a healthy environment and a healthy society? This definition of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment, whereby you first try to fulfill the basic needs such as livelihood, shelter, food, but also other needs from the human society, such as health, such as good relationships, on how managing the ecosystems allows you to retrieve these services or goods from the ecosystems. And that's kind of the big questions that we all are trying to answer. And well, because the oceans are public goods, we are struggling a little bit, and we will try to revise in this talk why are we struggling and how can we reverse this tendency of depletion of those services. Well, we all know this data that the majority of the fisheries are collapsing, that 90% of the top predators have disappeared. We all have heard about the shifting baseline syndrome that we are discussing about if the cod is influenced by environmental conditions or is influenced by fishing. And we have seminars from the 1970s to the 2000 to try to understand what is going on with the cod population. But when Andy Rosenberg put the baseline from the 19th century, it seems that we lost more than 90% of the population. So it seems that really the populations are fluctuating, but with a very defined trajectory to collapse. The other thing that we are facing now, and we will see it in the study case, is how we are increasing these conditions of hypoxic and acid waters, and how climate change is also bringing these hypoxic waters to places we didn't imagine like just 5 years ago. So resume this work that has done by Ben Halpern and a lot of colleagues, in all places where humans have occupied or are like intensively living and in dense populations, we have these cumulative impacts that are like driving all these ecosystem services to be lost. Is this one? So one thing that we shouldn't forget is that we are talking about public goods. That has some benefits, but that has also some problems to deal with. No? We are not talking about private property, we are talking about public goods. And there have been a lot of analogies with the tragedy of the commons, which I'm sure you have been reading a lot, between these two extremes of private goods or public goods, which perhaps we are being too black and white. We are having this too black and white approach, and there are some intermediate solutions that could help us to optimize and to reach these goals of the ecosystem services for an optimal solution for social well-being. I think one illustrating example of who is paying for conservation is this work done by Andrew Balfour in 2003, which is not very well known, but who is getting benefits from from the natural ecosystems. Even that they are local, the global community is also like harvesting some of these benefits. I mean, we all know the story about the Amazonia, that the global community is like saying, oh, you shouldn't destroy that forest. But the truth is that the locals don't have like an alternative, an economic alternative to be not incentivized to destroy the forest. And so basically the costs are absorbed by the local communities, but some of the benefits are harvested by the global community without this room for making a transaction or making a deal or dialogue of how to achieve a common goal, which is preserving all these ecosystem services harvested by the global and the local community. So this is what in economics we call the non-cooperative equilibrium, the Nash non-cooperative equilibrium, which is happening between the globals and the locals. Because the globals are frustrating because not a lot of marine protected areas are created, and the locals are like saying, well, and I need to pay everything to protect this ecosystem, or I receive some pressure from the global community, no? So, well, this cartoon helps to understand. I mean, we can continue and agree to have a good environment if you can continue to be poor, or we can continue to be as rich as we are. So this is a perfect example, but in the global community. Normally we see community like Santa Barbara or Isla Natividad, but we are a global community that also is facing a problem of the global commons. No? So I'm going to illustrate an example of how this non-equilibrium of cooperative behavior could be changed in an equilibrium of cooperative behavior. And this is from Isla Natividad, which a lot of you have here, that it's in the peninsula of Vizcaíno, in the middle part of the peninsula of Baja California. They have a very interesting system of turfs, as you say, which is basically property rights or privileged access for the benthic system. What does that mean is that they have the exclusive rights to fish the lobster, abalone, snail, urchins, just in the benthic system. And it's very outstanding of what we have in the rest of the world of open access that is like producing these race for fish. So it's in between a shared ecosystem and an ecosystem that we shared, which is the kelp forest. It has a lot of areas of upwelling, very productive, that sustain a large chain of important species from abalone, lobster, to marine mammals, and migratory species such as turtles, sharks, that go for certain periods of their life history to use this area as a feeding ground. Well, all these pictures that you have from California, from the past, are like the normal day in Baja California, no? I mean, these black sea bass that today is nominated as endangered in your country. It's very common there, and if you arrive there, you will be offered to eat black sea bass all days. No? It's the fish that they serve every day. So it's what we have called such as a relict ecosystem of what California was in the past. I mean, this picture is from National Geographic from the 1940s, and you see, well, there is a golf grouper there, but also you see the lobster the size of a baby. Well, this picture is from Bahia Tortugas, just like 2-3 years ago. And still you see those animals in the water, no? But also we have these vibrant coastal communities that are relying in this property regime to have built a very flourishing economy based in exploiting their resources. They have a system of quotas within the turfs. They have cooperatives are basic collective business that they take their decision with their board members, but they have assemblies. So they are very exemplary in many senses, no? So in 2006, after 2-3 years of negotiation, they decide to experiment to place 2 marine reserves to try to understand how abalone populations could be retrieved by larval seeding. So it was a very interesting process of negotiation, and they placed almost 10% of the area of abalone as marine reserve. It was a voluntary marine reserve without the government involved. It was the assembly that was saying, okay, let's try this. All the monitoring was taking place with the members of the cooperative. Reef Check California helped us to train them as scientists, as barefoot scientists, and they were making all these surveys every year, and we were analyzing all this data together with Stanford University, with Fiorenza Micheli, which has been our colleague for the last 5 years in this project. So basically, we all know this theory about marine reserve, but I have some young colleagues that are very good in computers and help us to understand how this works as a bank account. You save in the marine reserve, and you're expecting that with the larval spillover and with all these larvae, you get a more productive bank in the adjacent area. That sounds very reasonable and very, very logic. Well, when we settle the marine reserve, you all are aware these hypoxic events in upwelling areas become also very, very common in the area and produce a mass mortality of abalone and other benthic species. So we just published a paper. We find out that reserves were not just like producing this economic benefit like immediately, but were avoiding some species, some very vulnerable species like abalone to be extinct, basically. They were acting as a tool to enhance the resilience of these ecosystems. So one thing that in economics we haven't addressed properly is that once the fish and the abalone gets bigger and fatter, the opportunity cost that the fishermen are investing in no fishing in one reserve also increases. So you need to run like against this opportunity cost to try to offset with the gains of the spillover effect. So basically, this is the economic model without formulas. No, you have this cost of no fishing, and you will wait until the economic benefits of ecosystem restoration compensate the cost of no fishing, which is basically the opportunity cost. But if you have such mortalities, you need to think out of the box to make a marine reserve economically viable. And then you see, well, let's make some payments for ecosystem service for charismatic species. Or let's produce, for example, a market of ecotourism or energy production that is based basically in restoration. So the time that you require perhaps for abalone to be recovered, it's compensate in a term, in a time that makes sense for one generation. No? Our model suggests that with this mass mortality of abalone, it will take like 20 to 25 years to offset the opportunity cost of no fishing. So let's talk about this black sea bass that is in the lunch of everyone in the area of the Pacific. I mean, normally you get like 20 pesos for 200 kilograms, no, an average. That makes a 4,000 peso deal for one of these elephants from the kelp forest, no, which is basically like $300. But then you say, well, no, leave it in the water. And then you will get have some 5 divers that will pay $500 to go and visit these. And you say, well, but I have a better idea. Let's make an auction, like with the borrego cimarrón. How do you call the bighorn sheep, no? And okay, so we can sell each other in $2,000. That's a very, very good idea. But there is a market in California that is willing to invest in the existence value on that species. Oh, that sounds very, very, very interesting. So you can maximize the price of those species and try to maximize the benefits of the marine reserve, other than just rely in the spillover effect. No? So the benthic system that we have that just give the fisherman the rights for fish in the benthic environment don't allow to do this, because they just have the permit and the concession to fish, not the concession for tourism, not the concession to sell with the market for existence value, not the concession of even the kelp, which is basically the habitat of a lot of fish that recruits here. So even that is a very, very good system for allocating rights, it has its limitations and more in front of the climate change effects. No? So now I'm going to transport you to another place in the world, which is Fiji, where indigenous people have the rights of the land, completely rights of the land, but the rights of the land also includes the rights of the coral reef. This is what they call, the Fijian accent is worse than the English accent, but because they invent letters in the middle of their sentence. So this is called like Qoliqoli or something like that. But you can just read Qoliqoli, which no one is going to understand you in Fiji, but it's Qoliqoli. No? So here is the chief of one of the districts, like showing me in the map where are their territories. And this is a system that is shared by all the Indo-Pacific islands, which is very interesting in terms of illustrating how can we establish the institutional arrangements to make this type of markets and payments for ecosystem services. If you haven't, well, I'm just, this is Fiji, which is just here. It's far away, 15 hours far away from Los Angeles, This is part of my Pew Fellow project. So if you haven't read Bob Johannes for traditional knowledge and to try to revise how this system is working in the past, or was working in the past, was almost on the brink of extinction, and then was revived by a sort of effort with the international community, you need to read him. He's unfortunately now in our dimension. He passed away like 4 years ago, but he's a classic of how to understand this system and the local ecological knowledge that is behind the system. Bob Johannes defined how this system was working in the whole Indo-Pacific and how people were like starting to use again this system for marine ecosystem management. Bob Johannes, don't forget Bob Johannes. So he spent his life with the people of the Indo-Pacific trying to understand and import to the Western society all this important knowledge. One amazing thing that they have that it took me a lot to understand, it's the concept of Vanua. I mean, basically, now we are starting to think in this couple socio-ecological system, and we are like breaking our heads to say, well, how can you mix the ecology with the human aspects, and how can you understand how they interact? Well, they define everything in what they call Vanua. And I love this definition, which is quoted in Wikipedia Encyclopedia. And what you have here, it's what one of the officers put at the end of her email, a Vanua, an enlightened Vanua for a progressive Fiji. Vanua for them is everything. It's their connections with the ecosystem, it's their connections with the society, it's their connections it's their definition that extends to all this territory, but also to their relationships. And that reminds me this slide that I put you about the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. Basically, they have all these relationships, and they understand how they are connected with the system, and how the system can help to improve their social cohesion, or can not improve to that social cohesion. So I hope that you read that, because they have better accent than my accent. So this is basically the idea of Vanua. It's the mountains, it's their territory that includes the mountains, but also includes the reef, but also includes the people. No? So when I understood this, like after 15 days, I thought, oh, I think they are very progressive, and they are like in advance of what we need to do with our ecosystems. I didn't think there could be a prosperous subsistence economy in the world, and there is. They haven't transformed the system in the way that they cannot have all their food, which they get from the reef, which they get from the land. So when they serve a plate, and I was challenged by one of the chiefs of the tribe, because he said, oh, I don't know why how academics define poverty, because they say we are poor, and you have been eating with us, and you have been living with us for a while, and I mean, if you make some calculations of the amount or the money that this type of food would cost, it's a lot of money. So they say we are poor just because we don't have money in the banks. And that's right. They have this community, a lot of community activities. They place marine reserves to then harvest them 6 years later to build a school. They accompany their people during their elder years, so they are not alone. They don't need a social system because they have the healer in the town. They save together to improve the quality of the Vanua, because it includes not just the person, but includes the community and the ecosystem. So the Qoliqoli, which is so controversial that it triggers the 2006 Fijian coup, because the indigenous people were trying to claim for the rights they have in the Qoliqoli. That means to try to charge divers, for example, to go and dive in the reefs. Or if they created a protected area to say, well, how are you going to compensate us, no? So those are coups. I mean, I come from a very violent country, and really these coups were very civilized. They were saying, well, at 6 p.m. I'm going to take the power. Okay, but let's get organized, and okay, you will take the power. It was not a violent coup. I mean, I live in a much more violent country, and we don't have official coups, no? But they are now militarized, and they are trying to transit. It's a completely other story. But the Qoliqoli bill, which was going to strengthen the rights they have in the reef, creates this coup. So just very, very, like just few years ago, we thought that the Indo-Pacific was like the last hotspot of biodiversity for the coral reefs. The bad news that this group of researchers gave us in 2007 is that this is not true. Basically, the baseline was that 40% of the coral reefs in the 1980s were covering for around 60% of corals, no? That today is less than 2%. So this is due to multiple factors of stress that includes, yes, overfishing, yes, runoffs, but also climate impacts in coral ecosystems. There are places that are naturally and oceanographically much more vulnerable to the effects of increasing temperature than others. The challenge for the next years is going to try to identify those places that are less vulnerable and that could become the last refugees of these ecosystems like corals or kelp forests. This is kind of the question of these times, no? How can we identify these places that, because for certain features of oceanography, are much less vulnerable, no? In this, I mean, you can see it even in Fiji, in places that are not marine reserve, how rapid, just with little runoffs, the corals transform from coral-dominated to algae-dominated, and just basically dead corals in the floor. And this is in the Mamanuca Islands, which is the high impact tourist industry lives there. No? And they just like have, I don't know, cabins and snorkelers, but this is the result, no? And that is happening even in well-managing areas. I cannot see until, like the Great Barrier. I mean, the Great Barrier is well-managed, but is confronting reduction on the amount of areas with healthy coral cover reefs. And this is not things that are related to how it's managed, but related to these global processes that we have little control with. So in this context, in 1997, in a collaboration of the global and the local community, there was a creation of a large marine reserve called Namena Marine Reserve. It's one of the 10 spots for scuba diving in the world. I mean, it's all this reef. Namena cannot see here, but you can see it a little bit later. And it was an alliance between Jean-Michel Cousteau, the Coral Reef Alliance, World Life Conservation Society, and the community of Kubalau District, which, by the way, is written Kubalau, but you need to say Kubalau. No? So they have some wonderful resorts of the Marine Reserve. They have even biomass of fish that is comparable to sites like Palmyra, which doesn't have people. So the good news is that people can, like, be in a marine reserve, in a healthy marine reserve, with, I mean, there could be a healthy marine reserve with people. That's the message from the Namena Marine Reserve. They also have, for the first time, record that the marine reserve have attract these sharks and migratory species to feed in the area. No? So it's not just important locally, but it's like a station for all these migratory species, and it's becoming very important for, it's increasingly becoming very important. No? We all know this by anecdotal evidence, but in Namena, people that work there have like studied that, and it's happening. No? So also you have, because it's close to an upwelling area, but it's a little bit far away, so it doesn't affect the coral, like amazing and spectacular scenes of that biodiversity, which includes these, which we used to have in the Gulf of California just 20 years ago, or this baseline of corals, which you don't see anymore in many places, no? And also species that are really endangered, such as this giant clam, Tridacna gigas. No? So the conservation agreements. There is a resort, a wonderful resort that is all the land that belongs to the indigenous people in Fiji cannot be sold. And just take note, because it's very interesting that cannot be sold, because they have an objective that the indigenous people are not displaced. But it can be rent. So it's an incentive, but it has some restrictions. And we are going to have this in the conclusions. No? So they make 99 years old leases. So you rather have like the same vision when you make this lease, because the grandchildren of your grandchildren of the grandchildren are going to deal with the end of this lease in 100 years. No? So basically, the community of Nabatu, which is here, owns the Matankali that goes to the Namenalala Island, which now is Namena because it includes people, and they have this lease for 90 years old. Thanks to this, you have a wonderful, very low impact resort that holds one of the most important relict forest ecosystems in Fiji. And you also have the largest colony of red-footed booby, all like in the same area where the tourists go. So it's very low impact, it's very interesting model of development, and it has a lease with the community. The other important thing, which I was going to show you, because when I got it, I was like, oh my God, I traveled all these 15 hours. Oh, I didn't bring it. Yeah. So it's this tag that instead of like having this park fee that goes to the park, it goes to the community. They start with $1, and now you pay the $30 for your tag. And it goes to the community that directly who has the rights in the Qoliqoli. There, if someone would do the discourse analysis, it seems like it's a voluntary thing, but it's the proto payment for ecosystem for, I should have it, but it disappears. Oh, here it is. So, well, just imagine myself like after I don't know how many hours, and I was, do you want to pay the tag for diving? I would love to pay the tag for diving. I mean, this is the first example of payments for ecosystem services that, no, that I came all across the world to try to have this. So I bring one, I have one in my office like, oh, this is very illuminating. So a pioneer system for payments for ecosystem services in the sea with a small problem of adverse selection. For the non-economists, we use adverse selection when you create a policy. For example, we have in Mexico a policy to subsidize the elder people with $60, all the elder people with $60 per month, but this is designed to be targeted to the poor people, and the rich ladies from Mexico City go and they retrieve their subsidies, and they don't need it. So we are spending a lot of money that should be spent with the poor people, no? So it's whenever you don't design properly the market or properly the economic policy, and you reach others than the agents that should be reached, no? So what is happening in this wonderful project? First, the tourists and the global industry thought that the tag was going to be for the reserve surveillance, and the locals thought that was going to be for their scholarships of the young people, no? And they haven't communicated to each other to say, well, what is the common vision? No? The 99 years land easement, which was placed 20 years ago, it was written that 90% of the land was going to be a natural reserves, and the locals understood it was going to be a native reserve. And they are like, why? I cannot go to my Matankali, which is, no? And they haven't talked in 20 years. And Nabatu, which is this community, no, which basically owns the Qoliqoli that has the large marine reserve, is not receiving the direct compensation, even they are the ones that are investing in no fishing there. So I have a meeting with them, and I say, how much do you think you were feel, with how much do you think you were going to feel compensating by not using this large marine reserve? And because they are not a financial economy, they are just using this money to improve the management of their Vanua, they say, well, with 15,000 Fijian dollars annually will be enough. And I was, oh, that's 7,500 American dollars. With a trust of $100,000, you will solve this problem forever, no? When I was interviewed by some consultants from the Packard Foundation, and they told me, well, but this is expensive. The Packard Foundation have invested like $20 million in this region to try to make these networks of marine reserves. And that's a little bit like 6 zeros less or 4 zeros less, no? I mean, it's really a deal that you can do very easily just by communicating. So that reminds me the tragedy of the commons cartoon, that I hear that it lacks a lot of dialogue, no? I mean, actors and agents and stakeholders, if they sit down, can solve this tragedy, no? And if you, well, we will see it, I mean, the prisoners in the prisoner's dilemma couldn't talk. They were confined in some jails, and they couldn't talk. But we, as part of the society, can, of course, talk. And just as an example, I mean, we all think that fishing is causing a lot of the loss of environmental services. And it was calculated roughly by Constance and their colleagues, which you can like argue against these rough numbers, but the environmental services that we retrieved from the coral reefs are valued in more than $6,000. The fishing industry or the fishing activity is $200. So there is plenty of room to make these negotiations. So, but basically what do you need? A buyer, a seller, a marketplace, and a constitution and a legal system to make this trade. That's it. If the buyer is not communicating with the seller, but with another one that believes that he's the seller, you have a problem, no? I mean, you need to have very, very clear who has the rights and how can you make these transactions, no? And this is not something that hasn't been proposed. Steve Gaines, Leah Gerber, Christopher Costello, both, two of faculty members from Euroschool, are proposing to have this system in the whale industry. I mean, we all are like suffering in Iceland because whales are being killed. Well, why don't we just put those whales in the market and say, well, how much is the global community willing to invest to buy those rights for killing a whale? And that's it. That's it to create these markets, no? Sometimes you go to the website and you say, well, adopt a gorilla. You can by $25 have, what's the name of this gorilla? Iwaku, or, yeah, Iwaku. But none of this money that goes for Iwaku goes for the guy that is going to kill Iwaku for his livelihood. So if we really want to adopt Iwaku, first we need to give the rights to the hunter, so it makes more sense to sell it to the global community and to make a transaction. Oh, this should go. Oh, yes. It seems that we are in the sea like in the Wild West. You remember those stories where people were with guns killing each other because they didn't know who was the owner of the cows and who was the owner of the places where the cows were feeding. But finally, they were creating institutions that allow people to make these transactions, no? We are making a work in progress without thinking that we are going either to privatize or to have it in this, all the ecosystems in the States. We can make some designs in a way that people can start to make these agreements with the global community. But first we need to design this market to achieve one objective. We all want to preserve the ecosystem services from a public good. With which tools we can achieve this without like blaming the other. You didn't put enough money to invest in the marine reserve, or your marine reserve is too small to be effective, no? How do you place this space for dialogue? And then give the people the very clarified property, I'm not going to say property rights because then I get, no, the privileged access so they can make these transactions with the global community. And let's test it. I mean, in the Wild West, a lot of people were killed because they thought one cow were his cow, and the other one thought it was his cow, until they put some rules to agree and stop killing each other for the cows, no? And there is a wonderful idea of this mechanism, the science theory, which in science was promoted as the help for the invisible hand of Adam Smith, that you put an objective of a market, and then you put a series of incentives and constraints so you can reach that objective. In the case of Fiji, they don't want to lose their land. And they were very, very clever in just allowed to make leases. Because otherwise, in 100 years, all the indigenous culture of Fiji was going to be disappear and was going to be replaced by a community of Europeans or Americans or Mexicans that could buy the land. So it's a very interesting model, and it's in progress, no? And I'm going to leave you with the words from Eleanor Ostrom that used to have a better accent than me. And how she's like saying, well, we shouldn't think about these analogies of the prisoner dilemma of and think that everything will end in a tragedy. I mean, we can speak, we can create this common vision, but we need to define who are the commons. And if we don't define that within the commons, the global community is involved, then they wouldn't be a deal. No? Did you finish? And that's it. Thank you very much.
Looks like we have a little bit of time if anybody has any questions to ask Andrea.
There's another concept in game theory called the sucker's payoff, and that might be the gorilla hunter owns the rights to the gorilla, takes the payment for the gorilla, but shoots the gorilla anyway. How do you prevent this outcome?
Very interesting. I mean, of course, one of the slides that I hide, and I'm going to show you, just because it was too long. I mean, there are a lot of enabling conditions, no? Trust, legal systems, social cohesion that should happen in the countries before we can like reach these sophisticated market solutions. No? I mean, if you are in a place that there is no legal system and people don't follow the rules and you have like problems with your personal safety, like in Mexico. No? I mean, our solutions are not going to work. No? So there is a wonderful work of the orders of outcomes by, I cannot remember now the author. Perhaps Steve can help me. Olson. And basically the enabling conditions are these. I mean, you cannot think about ecosystem health and transactions without having these. Huh? Mari Luna. Condition, yeah, I totally agree. I mean, when we define Mexico, no, it's, I mean, you know that regions are very different, and they are very different because they are too far away from the border to become an important place for the drug dealers, no? Exactly.
So, yes, I agree. I think your theory is applicable in small communities that can grow, catch up to the rest. But I think there's no reason situations, temporary situations with countries like that.
Yeah, temporary and regions, no? Yeah. No, I hope. See. Yeah, I agree. See. More questions? See?
Concern that just pricing everything, every ecosystem service, for example, essentially, I mean, over the long run, it would seem that basically is at the whim of sort of human taste. So like maybe 50 years from now, we won't have a taste for whales being around any longer. And supposed development of an ethic that sort of values, living in a way that allows other members of the ecosystem to live as well. Is there a concern for that in the long run, pricing everything?
I mean, I don't think there are mutually exclusive alternatives, no? I mean, we need to go with our toolbox and say, well, can we build a common ethical issue? I mean, my research assistant in Fiji, his grandfather grand-grandfather was still a cannibalist, no? And we were joking, and I was, oh, I don't like this person, KK, eat it, no? I mean, the ethics are something that changed, no? I mean, it was just 3 generations ago that they were eating people, no? Just to mark their territory, no? Like the Wild West. So I think we shouldn't like just put all our investment in one tool, no? But that will help a lot. I mean, that will help in the sense that will avoid people to have the need to go and exploit that system that is providing a lot of services, no? Like Namena Marine Reserve or the reserve in Natividad, no?
Your experience working in these actual case studies, how communities responded to these kind of payout systems over time? Something that, a lot of these cases sometimes the people who are doing, say, the environmental investing may have a much lower discount rate than people who are kind of in the community. So even from the community's perspective, the payoff sounds great right now because they're really trying to, get the school for next year. They're like, maybe they're less happy about it in 5 years. They realize they've got the school, but they still can't fish. I'm just wondering, your experience, how have these types of systems played out, as the system has actually evolved over time?
Yeah, well, they are really, really proto-systems. I mean, I cannot like tell you like the experience. In the case of Fiji, their lack of dialogue has like create this, oh, they are gaining a lot of money with the divers, and they are not because it's too far away, no? Or they are not paying all of them, no? Instead of, my experience will say that, I mean, we should have like better places to express our worries, our changes, our inconformities, and better places to negotiate in a democratic way, no? I mean, the marine reserves from Natividad were result of a consensus between the assembly, but it was not like straightforward. They were discussing, and they were like, and it took 3 years, no? And I mean, they might change, but in the case of Natividad, even that we confront these 6 years of having a big natural mortality, they decide to continue with the reserve for more than other 6 years, no? There are a lot of intangibles, like more than the economic benefits of having the science there and being part of the science and being taking the data and feeling empowered of not having like a group of scientists coming and going and then sending a paper in English. So, I mean, I think my message will say, I mean, we should try. We should try, and we should assess the performance of these systems.